Hey everyone, welcome back to their Hardware News Recap of the Week. In this one, OpenAI reportedly offering the Trump administration a 5% stake in OpenAI. Lenovo saying that RAM prices won't ever go back to normal and joking about it, kind of. Just like, ha ha ha. Memory makers facing price-fixing antitrust litigation. Those two aren't related. GTA 6, a game about stealing cars, it wants to sell you digital special cars for $80 to $100, and you don't get a disc for any of it. And related to that, the PlayStation dropping disc support. Let's get into it. Before that, this video is brought to you by Thermal Grizzly and their new Duronaut Thermal Paste. Thermal Grizzly claims its Duronaut paste is intended for long-term stability and endurance, focusing on paste longevity in addition to the usual performance focus. Thermal Grizzly's Duronaut paste comes with applicators and spreaders, and ships in numerous tube sizes, aiming to provide a high-end paste for PC builds and daily driven overclocks by enthusiasts. Learn more at the link in the description below. All right, it's been a couple weeks for hardware news, so quick GM update first. For the Steam Machine, we have some additional data. It doesn't warrant a whole extra video, but we wanted to put it somewhere just in case it's useful to some people. So we ran some testing on single versus dual stick configurations, single and multi-channel, dual channel configurations. That video is up. We went back through and did additional testing on that with two 8GB sticks, in addition to the two 16GB sticks that we tested previously. And for those of you who saw that video, you already know this, but basically we planned for our test suite to fit within the 16GB capacity so that even with 32, it shouldn't have any extra benefit in the testing. Now, the reason we did this is because we couldn't get the Steam Machine to post with the first 2x8GB kit that we bought for the Steam Machine. It wouldn't turn on. But it did when we bought a second 16GB stick and matched it, and that seemed to work out fine. So anyway, the 2x8 performs identically to the 2x16 configuration that we tested. That's what we expected because we tried to fit the test suite within the 16GB capacity, wasn't a problem. 7-zip compression, decompression, Baldur's Gate 3, anything where we saw like an actually meaningful difference that still appears in the exact same amount as it did with 216s on 2.8s. So we got the same results for single versus dual channel. The capacity didn't matter in our testing. Obviously that would change if you exceeded the capacity, but that's a different problem. That's not what we were evaluating. So anyway, that's the data for you. I don't have any charts for it because it's like literally the same numbers on the charts as the 216s, but we wanted to put it somewhere because I did spend money on the memory kits, and it'd be nice if someone benefited from the information. Finally, on our side, we have a bunch of stuff on sale on the GN store right now, so we can make some space in the warehouse and also some money to fund the new endeavors and projects that we have coming up. We have some pretty big ones we're planning for the end of the year. We also launched our brand new stackable ESD-safe AMD CPU holders. These are trays that fit 6 AMD CPUs each. We sell them in groups. 2 or more. They fit FM2, FM2 Plus, AM3, AM3 Plus, AM4, and AM5, and I might be missing some. AMD's had a lot of 40x40 package CPUs, but if it's in that form factor, it'll fit. We just made these for us to use because we have a bunch of old and new CPUs from our benchmarking to store, and AMD conveniently has them all in about the same package, so we just decided to make them ourselves this time. And we're selling them in packs of 2 to 20 if you want one. Heads up on those, they will have some slight glue residue on the bottom. I would be like, full transparency, it's there. I didn't clean it off. Like, I personally cleared the trays, I personally queued the prints, and I left the glue residue there. So sorry, you know, but it's mostly dry at this point. It's just the way that it's PETG, ESD, and the printer we were using at the time, we're not using anymore. But that one was having issues with stuff moving on the tray when we were printing it. And otherwise, I personally tested the ESD material we're using. So it's a PETG ESD, and basically I did a surface resistance test on it to make sure it's anti-static dissipative, as opposed to an insulative plastic, which is what basically all the CPU trays that we've ever bought are made out of. So a little bit of extra there, and since we're making it ourselves, it's easier to control for that. I could not personally find anything that used that material that just existed from injection molding, so we made it. So anyway, that's up if you want it on the store. We've also dropped our GN15 all-over component mouse mat price to $20 now, or $40 with the autograph. It has a custom yellow rubber underside and stitched blue border. Our Retro IO coaster packs are also temporarily on sale. Those are the really flexible, soft material that is great for looking cool and catching condensation. We have them in a floppy disk drive, front of a case styling, as well as retro controller colorway and an IBM Model M style numpad. Each pack contains all 4 of the designs. We're also moving into our next big travel adventure to close out the AI dystopia campaign. But there's one problem. The AI dystopia is here to stay, whether or not we are specifically targeting it down for coverage. It appears that this is just the future now. We have, in the coming months, we'll be closing out one big story where the scope blew up because the news didn't stop, which is the data center story. So we're finally working on finalizing that, putting that together. That'll close out that campaign. We had a ton of videos in that series, like more than double of what I was expecting to put out. So thank you all for the interest and the support on that one. All of it's already on the channel, with the exception of the data center one, which we're closing on. And then I'm also going to finalize a couple behind the scenes videos. We'll get that out to all of you who supported, and that should wrap it for that. And then at that point, I mean, within a couple months or so, when we finish that content and get it all out the door, I'm going to be shifting my focus over to 3D printers for a bit, which is because in California this past week, there was some major news, which is Louis Rossmann was there streaming it. There was a hearing where, and we'll talk about this in a separate video, but where the politicians on site voted to basically move things towards sending 3D print files through a privately controlled server by the companies that sell the 3D printers to make sure that the things you're printing aren't bad shapes. That's kind of the short version of the multi-hour long hearing. So we'll be talking about that in a separate thing, but that's where I'm going to be focusing that topic down next, because that one's pretty interesting to me. Not just specifically the laws around it, but also Bamboo Lab and all that other stuff. We'll kind of blend it all into one, I think. So that'll be our next big deep dive. But in the meantime, let's get over to the first story. Up first, according to the Financial Times, OpenAI has reportedly asked the US government to take a 5% stake in the company, which is private right now, but has been reportedly eyeing an IPO. And the Financial Times report is paywalled. So we turned to Reuters, who re-reported the Financial Times report, and Reuters is also paywalled. So we went back 20 years and went to yahoo.com, which one is still in business, and as we understand it too, largely thanks to Japan. Apparently the Japanese market is really reliant on Yahoo still. But two, republishes all of the paywalled stuff. I don't know how that works. Apparently it's okay if Yahoo does it, so we'll go there. OpenAI has apparently, quote, proposed that other US AI firms also give Washington similar stakes, unquote, which matches what we saw when the Trump administration bought almost 10% of Intel, followed by NVIDIA buying about 4 to 5% of what should be its competitor, and boosting the value of what the US government bought substantially immediately after. And it sure seems like there wouldn't be much of a reason for the US government to investigate antitrust violations if companies own a stake in what the US government also owns a stake in, because that number go down, and that's bad. In the latest, Yahoo reports that Reuters reports that Financial Times reports that OpenAI has reportedly responded positively to Trump's statements last month that he wanted to take a stake in AI companies. Re-reporting Reuters, re-reporting the Financial Times, reported by Yahoo, re-reported by Gamers Nexus, quote, a Forrester analyst said a pre-IPO government stake could ease investor risk concerns about regulation in the US, end quote. And that right there might be why we're seeing this interest right now, because no administration of any party wants the economy to collapse on their watch. And as non-economists, it sure seems like with an AI bubble pop, that would be the greatest threat to the economy. So continuing to pump money into it would help keep it inflated a little bit longer. Right? Such a move would theoretically soften investor fears, especially if there is an IPO for OpenAI at some point, and it would keep the bubble going a bit longer. And even better if you can push the pop into the next set of administration and politicians. So it's a pre-bailout bailout plan, I guess, is what we're getting at here. Up next, on June 25th, 17 plaintiffs sued the memory companies, Micron, Samsung, and SK Hynix, the big three. And this is over allegations that they conspired to inflate prices and perform illegal price fixing. Again, a couple agains now. But meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Specifically, the lawsuit alleges that the memory manufacturers coordinated a pivot toward HBM while simultaneously restricting commodity DRAM production to inflate prices. The legal complaint reads, quote, the DRAM oligopolists, that's a fun word to say, you should try it, oligopolists, have simultaneously cut production, coordinated a pivot to HBM, and exit from DDR3 and DDR4, and otherwise decreased and locked up conventional DRAM supply while prices charged up with mind-blowing scale and rapidity, end quote. The complaint also states, quote, since 2022, these firms have fixed supply and prices for DRAM, engaging in conduct that makes no economic sense, absent collusion, and that has driven up the price of conventional DRAM, approximately 700% in a 4-year period, end quote. So in other words, to summarize what they're saying in the over 100-page complaint, the 3 largest memory manufacturers looked at it and went, if it ain't broke, don't price fix it. Don't fix it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. The plaintiffs are accusing the memory makers of doing the only thing more cringeworthy than DLSS5 looks maxing: profit maxing. The plaintiffs elaborate, quote, when one firm in an oligopoly restricts output, the profit maximizing response for rivals is to expand and capture the demand being surrendered. Here, the opposite happened at every turn. When Micron cut wafer starts 20% in October 2022, Samsung and SK Hynix contemporaneously made cuts of their own, end quote. This is something that you might recall we pointed out in some of our Micron coverage last year, I think it was, when we were talking about what certainly appeared to be corruption, where, as we said in the DRAM cartel documentary, the biggest change they've made is now you just collude openly. You just do it through the financial reports and the public statements and the earnings reports and the investor calls and kind of, hey, we're thinking about cutting the wafer production. It'd be a shame if any of our competitors were listening to this and also did that. But anyway, check out the DRAM cartel documentary. We talk about it there. The complaint, though, argues that rather than competing for market share, each competitor instead mirrored its rivals' production cuts. The 17 plaintiffs include a number of individuals and small businesses. The lawsuit takes place within the Northern District of California, where the plaintiffs are seeking treble damages. This is a legal course of action that allows a court to triple the damages awarded to the plaintiffs. The case has been assigned to Judge Noel Wise. As we previously talked about in the DRAM cartel documentary, the Department of Justice fined members of the DRAM cartel more than $731 million in 2006 for participating in a, quote, global conspiracy to fix DRAM prices, end quote. And the DOJ actually branded it as a cartel. That wasn't our word, that was the DOJ's word back in the early to mid 2000s. And what was interesting about that case was Micron was granted some level of effectively forgiveness or clemency for being a snitch, where Samsung and SK Hynix, the 2 Korean companies, were charged more strictly or forcefully than Micron, the only American company in the memory space, was charged. But we'll leave that discussion to that previous video. The full legal document for this is over 100 pages long. We are currently working on deep diving it for a full in-depth discussion. It's going to take us quite a while to read through it all and check all their sources and everything, but we're putting something together on that if you're curious about it. The DRAM makers have not only been convicted of cartel collusion in the past, but have also been challenged for it multiple times since, such as in 2018, when actually one of our own research pieces was cited in a legal complaint filed against the memory makers for the same antitrust type of violations. Suffice to say, we'll definitely be keeping tabs on the stories that develops. We'll have more for you soon. Up next, speaking of Samsung and SK Hynix, the 2 companies are working on a $500 billion fab rollout where they're planning to build new fabs in the southwest of South Korea as part of a broader expansion of its semiconductor initiative valued at roughly 800 trillion won, or about $518 billion US. So $500 billion of fab construction, or in other words, 1/2 of an Elon Musk. We spoke with some industry insiders who know about silicon provision and manufacturing capacity, and one of them told GN this. Quote, I was in our factories this week and our labs where they do lots of engineering level testing for the AI stuff. There's no way consumer is going to get shit. We are 20% of the global AI sales and growing, and we can't get enough silicon fast enough to keep up with demand. NVIDIA, AMD, and Intel could take 100% of TSMC production capability, and it wouldn't be half of what we need, end quote. So speaking with these insiders and to others, despite the new fabs coming online, one, it takes years for them to do so, with the most kind of near-term fabs targeted for 2028 and 2030 for production. But also, the supply coming online will still target the highest value customer, which remains data center. And unless something major changes, like a bubble pop, it does appear that the data center clients would want that capacity and would keep the prices elevated. So Reuters reports that the Fab initiative in Korea is intended to help South Korea, quote, dominate the AI sector, end quote, which likewise doesn't give a whole lot of hope for the consumer if that is the stated objective for the build-outs. We sent in a reporter to press an executive at the South Korean memory manufacturers Samsung and Hynix on why they're looking into building more fabs right now.
What inspired you to build a second Krusty Krab right next door to the original?
Money!
Simple enough. This was actually the exact same answer that Micron gave in our recent investigative report. In fact, it looked like the same executive that Micron had in our recent investigative report. Up next, according to computerbase.de at ISC 2026, a high-performance computing event held in Germany, Lenovo stated that DRAM and NAND prices are unlikely to return to last year's levels anytime soon. In a machine-translated news story, the publication wrote and cited Lenovo to say, quote, even after significantly increased production capacity is implemented, prices will likely never fall back to the levels seen a year ago, end quote. Lenovo reportedly used the word never jokingly, but argued that growing AI demand will keep memory prices elevated even as new production capacity comes online. Also, maybe this is just me, but somehow prices will never come back down to levels you normal people can afford is not really that funny, but you know, maybe that's just me. I don't know. If you're a company that's helping keep the prices elevated and somehow it just seems like these big companies that contribute to the memory prices, they just keep finding it really funny.
And so I think the fact that everything is scarce is fantastic for us.
Oh, you know, I think I've got the solution. If we all just learn to adopt the Bezos rich guy laugh, then maybe they'll finally accept us. Let's step away from the stories about price increases to instead cover something else in the news. Re-released 5800X3D already scalped for high prices. Motherfucker. AMD's 4-year-old 5800X3D, which is truly, actually a goated CPU, it's one of the best CPUs we've ever tested, genuinely, has been re-released. It's still the 8-core 16-thread solution with the extra cache that we reviewed back then, and it's one of the best performing gaming CPUs of its generation and the best performing gaming CPU on AM4. AMD re-released it on June 25th and is using an updated bonding process. Now, for the most part, you could look at our 9850X3D or 9950X3D benchmarks and reviews because we have the 5800X3D in those charts and it will be about the same as this one. But because the bonding process changed, basically the fabrication technology used to make the 5800X3D is reportedly no longer available. AMD had to do some light level of re-engineering to get it producible on modern fabrication technology, and that would be the only reason we want to do a retest. We weren't able to get one. They disappeared pretty fast, and AMD doesn't talk to us. But if you happen to buy a 5800X3D Anniversary Edition and you want to sell it to us or loan it to us, it'll be easier if we buy it, but either way, you can email team, T-E-A-M, at gamersnexus.net. We're not going to respond to all of them. We'll just kind of pick the first one that makes sense for us. And if we can get it in, you know, we'll do a retest on it to see if it differs. I don't suspect it will, but maybe in some ways that are non-FPS, like thermal or something, that would be where the differences emerge. Maybe power. Anyway, we'll look at it if we can get one. But the new 5800X3D relaunched at $350, which is $100 less than what the goated AM4 CPU originally launched at in 2022. However, according to notebookcheck.net, the re-release sold out at numerous retailers within 15 minutes. Now, scalpers are selling it for as high as $750, which leaves normal consumers looking like this.
Please, sir, I want some more.
Actually, that applies to RAM too. The good news, I guess, is that AMD says it plans to continue mass production of the 5800X3D part. So I guess supply will improve on the old part on the previous platform. But as we said previously, for the launch of the 5800X3D version 2, it feels kind of bad when it's priced as fucking high as it is, because it's really not any better. It's more expensive than the 5800X3D was selling for at the middle and end of the period it was available for originally, the first time around. And so, although yes, it looks like AMD is bestowing upon us a CPU for a prior platform and it's quote unquote affordable, the way I kind of look at it is AMD is contributing to the memory crunch and the price increases in silicon of modern platforms. And the best way AMD consumer client can capitalize on the people who can't afford DDR5 is to sell them more DDR4 compatible parts to put into their aging AM4 systems, because then you can at least keep the sales rolling in for client while people can't afford to build an entirely new system because of the RAM prices. That's kind of how it looks to me, and it seems opportunistic and, you know, like they're vultures. But I guess I don't know. It's just, that's how I see it. Up next, Representative Brett Guthrie has introduced the KIDS Act, which is a partially self-contained acronym standing for Kids, Internet and Digital Safety Act.
Oh boy, I usually only get this excited when they say the title of a movie in the movie.
The 115-page bill combines many internet-related bills into one and says it aims to, quote, protect children and teens online, empower parents and strengthen families, and for other purposes, end quote. That other purposes is doing a lot of heavy lifting. I would love to know what those are. For other purposes, looking at the bill and reading between the lines, the other purposes seem to be mass surveillance. Technically another purpose, maybe one worth listing.
Oh shit, here we go again.
The bill says that it's designed to protect the children from things like adult websites and encompasses websites that show, quote, more than 1/3, end quote, of illicit material. The bill says it's trying to address threats of physical violence, exploitation, drugs, and financial scams. Financial scams, unlike the $1 billion+ of crypto money that the current administration's been moving around, but that doesn't target that one. It's different, I think, or something. What we really think this bill is ultimately pushing is identity verification, increased online censorship, and weaker privacy protections for internet users across the board. But that doesn't sell as well. As is typical of the internet bills, it's pushed as protecting the children, an admirable goal, and one that's pretty hard to oppose without seeming like a gigantic sleazebag. I mean, given the title of the bill is Kids, you can see how it might be bad for the headlines if you're a politician and you stand up and say, I oppose funding kids. That's not what I meant. I oppose supporting kids. Okay, that's also not really the best phrase. Could be used out of context. We should strike down. No, that's not going to be better. The bill suggests it does not require ID verification, stating, quote, nothing in this subtitle may be construed to require the provider of a covered platform to implement an age gating or age verification functionality on the covered platform, end quote. But it also says stuff like this, quote, a provider of a covered platform may not facilitate the advertising of narcotic drugs, cannabis products, tobacco products, gambling, or alcohol to a user of or visitor to the covered platform who the provider knows is a minor, end quote. Huh. If I were a provider of a covered platform, how might I make sure that the users aren't minors? I need some kind of way to verify that. It's just like some kind of like, if there's like a government issued thing that says their birth date, I could probably collect that, just make sure I don't have any liability. For more evidence of why companies may feel pressure to verify users' ages if covered platforms fail to comply, the bill states that a violation, quote, shall be treated as a violation of a regulation under Section 18A1B of the Federal Trade Commission Act, end quote. I mean, actually, genuinely, we think this creates enough legal liability for the companies where the easiest solution is going to be for them to collect IDs. Like, that sure seems like where it's going. And it's a clever way to make it look like it's not the government requiring ID verification, it's the private companies or something. But it will essentially push companies towards ID verification without technically forcing them to do so. And it's sort of, it's like a Schrodinger's ID verification. Like, the ID is both required and not required as long as you don't visit the website. But as we've talked about in our coverage of NYCOSA, the New York Online Safety Act, which is on GNCA if you want to learn about that, also discussed in our PlayStation Scan Face to Play GNC video and our Discord videos on this channel, typical verification measures we've seen include handing over copies of your ID. We looked through the bill and we noticed a segment that talks about not letting companies conduct market research on minors. It's called the Stop Profiling Youth and Kids Act. That's right, it's the SPY Act. Just make sure I got the Stop Profiling Youth. No, yeah, that does spell spy. Okay,
For every person who dreams up the electric light bulb, there's the one who dreams up the atom bomb.
Rockstar has finally revealed the price of GTA 6, and it's $80 fucking dollars, or $100 if you want to actually get the game that you would expect to get. For the Ultimate Edition, $100, it gatekeeps cars, tattoos, guns, clothing, hair, and makeup from the filthy poors and casuals who don't rise to the level of being ultimate. Ironic that a game about stealing cars is taking extra money to paint them special colors for fake cars. Maybe piracy is justified. Speaking of taking things from you, physical copies of the game also won't come with physical copies of the game. Boxes instead will include pieces of paper with download codes. Maybe the real grand thefts were the ones we made purchasing the game. IGN also says that the Ultimate Edition will have an exclusive mission. GTA 6 is scheduled to release on November 19th, 2026, which will be more than 13 years after the launch of GTA 5 the first time it launched. This is assuming it doesn't get delayed any further as well.
Pray I don't alter it any further.
At least that's what Corsair is praying for. Now, MarketWatch ran a great story about GTA 6 pricing concerns and quoted several experts in its write-up. One expert MarketWatch interviewed stated, quote, "The real concern is that GTA is a market-moving force in PC gaming and gaming in general. I think there is a real chance that this drags game prices up overall," end quote. MarketWatch attributed Steve Burke of Gamers Nexus for the quote. It's weird, that guy writes a lot like I do. I should talk to him or something. Up next, shortly after writing that GTA story, PlayStation announced that it would drop physical disc production beyond January 2028. Sure seems like one provided cover fire for the other. In a blog post, Sony wrote, quote, "In response to shifting trends in consumer preference, new games will be released on PlayStation Store and at retailers in digital formats only," end quote. So if a game launches after January 2028, there won't be a disc version of the game. We're approaching the future where you won't be able to pull your future consoles out of the closet or the attic in 15 or 20 years and show your kids how fun it was to play whatever game. Or replay it yourself for nostalgia's sake. That seems to be going away. You know, you could still do that with something like an Atari 2600 or an NES or whatever, but that feature is rapidly disappearing now. On PC, we've been pretty heavy digital for a while now, but on PC, there's also multiple storefronts you can buy things from, and there's some level of assurance you're going to be able to play that thing in the future, where even if something like Steam vanishes or changes its policies or whatever, GOG exists where you can actually download and store it. To be fair, piracy is a lot easier on PC as well. So if you really had to go that way, even if you didn't want to, even if you wanted to give them your money and they just don't sell it anymore, there's ways to still play games and get access to them on PC, even though we have abandoned largely physical, which I would prefer we didn't. I have this awesome wall of all the physical games I bought, and then it just abruptly stopped somewhere around, I don't know, 2014, 2015 or something. But anyway, that's what it's looking like. So, quote, "This is a natural direction for Sony Interactive Entertainment to adapt to consumer trends as the general preference for digital media significantly outpaces physical discs." It's an interesting way to phrase it. The quote continues, "This transition will enable us to align more closely with how most of our community prefers to access and play games today," end quote. We're sure it has nothing to do with the eliminating used game sales and keeping every purchase inside of Sony's ecosystem. We couldn't help but notice that the blog post concluded with the following question: "Did you like this?" coupled with a clickable heart emoji. We guess all the people who bought a PlayStation with a disc drive add-on, or just don't have access to high-speed internet, which is still a lot of people, or simply prefer owning physical media, don't click on the heart emoji, but also good job on ruining all of the goodwill we've established here, Sony.
This is how you share your games on PS4.
Thanks.
PlayStation.
Actually, the comment on the video that comes from recaps it well. Quote, "This is like watching the wedding video after the divorce," end quote. That's going to be it for hardware news this week. We have a lot coming up, so I think the hard drive cartel video might already be out by the time this news video is out. Check the channel to check that out. If it's not, it'll be out next, but that one's pretty interesting. And plenty more. We've got some more benchmarks coming online soon. Subscribe for more. As always, you can go to store.gamersaccess.net to support us directly, like by buying some of the stuff that we have on sale there right now, some of our mouse mats, for example, the component all over print, and also the Retro IO coaster packs, some of the t-shirts that are left from the Disappointment Tour 2025. that we launched this year to clear the rest of that out, and there's a few other things as well. So check that out on the store and subscribe for more. We'll see you all next time.